pass it on to Tamanya.
Hello, welcome everyone. So glad to have everyone back, all of the wonderful facilitators and everyone who has been joining us for the first time in this session. My name is Tamanya Garza. I am the National PAAL Director of Community and Justice Initiatives, and I'm also the Philly Chief Rep, Philadelphia. I'm coming to you from the land of the Lenni Lenape people whose historical territory includes the places colonially known as Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Long Island, and the Lower Hudson Valley. For more than 10,000 years, the Lenape people have been stewards of these lands, as well as the river of human beings, or the Delaware River. Over the past 250 years, many of the Lenape people were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands and dispersed throughout the country, though some families remain. Some of these families continue the traditions of their ancestors to this day. The violence that removes the Lenape people from their homeland is a powerful part of the history of Pennsylvania, and we acknowledge that in this moment, we work and live on those very lands. This is the story of our entire country. We encourage you to learn about the lands where you live and work, and the history of the people who lived there before colonization. Many still live there today, though they are often starved of the very resources they protected for so long, including access to housing, sustainable foodways, safety, clean water, and the land where they once lived with their families. This information was provided in part by www.lenape-nation.org. While it is important to remember the history of these lands, it's also important to remember that Indigenous people still live in our communities. So learn about the artists, activists, families, and other community members that live on the lands where you live and work, and celebrate their joys with them, help them face their challenges, and return and restore the resources that were stolen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and welcome. Welcome. We are starting the session, Kids on Site. I'm going to get the exact title is How to Do It in a Restarting World. So this has always been a part of our summit conversations, and Renee, this is the first time I think we've been able to have you really speak into the space. We've been doing this for so long. And Leanne, Seed Art Share with Renee and Broadway Babysitters with Leanne. We've been longtime partners with both of your organizations. We have learned so much about how this big, beautiful dream can become a reality. So I just want to thank you both for lending your time, not only to this space, but to this initiative that you do on the daily. For folks who are listening in and priming yourself for the conversation, we've always talked about this, but then it changed when the shutdown happened, and it's shifting again a bit when we're talking about vaccines and masks and space and distance. And I just want to invite that there may not be a perfect answer for some of these very complex conversations because of biology and vulnerability. But what the conversation does hope to achieve is a conversation around expertise, care, and how possible it is to have kids on site, even now. So I would love to invite you each to self-introduce. I will throw the ball to Leanne, and Leanne, you can throw the ball to Renee. We'd love to hear your name, how you identify. I'm Rachel Spencer Hewitt, by the way, at PAAL, how you identify, and a brief description of the company you work for.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I'm obviously really excited to be here since we've been working with you all so long. My name is Leanne Gatto. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the COO at Broadway Babysitters. Broadway Babysitters is currently a New York City-based company, but small, exciting announcement that we will be in Chicago in 2023. So any Chicagoans out there, very exciting for that. But we are a New York City-based company that provides childcare by artists in the community, whether they are stage managers, artists, performers, any of the above, for both families in the arts, but also families just looking to support the arts and bring that joy that artists bring into their homes. So that's a little bit about us. I'm sure we'll talk even more about what we do. We partner with PAAL and other institutional organizations looking to provide care on site, in addition to all the other things that we do. So I'm excited to chat with y'all, and I'll pass over to Renee.
I'm Renee Wimberly, Raleigh, North Carolina, and I am a mom of three, a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, 15-year-old, and until recently was also caring for my mom, who lived with us for 12 years. So part of that sandwich generation. And also for part of last year, an infant godson and a 7-year-old who for half of the year last year as well. So, and I'm 53, so I had forgotten what a lot of that baby stuff was like. So yeah, all of that happened really fast. And I was just remembering that yesterday. I'm like, I was also in the middle of a formula situation last year too. But yeah, so I have been a part of SEED for 12 years. And our whole mission when we originally started was not to ever make plays, but it was to care for artists who had parents, who were parents. My husband and I were both, he's a musician and I was an actor, and we wanted to go back into theater and playing out, and realized how in the world do people do this when they have children? And because this made great sense when we were 20, but it did not make any sense once we had little people in our home. And so that was our whole mission when we started the company. And since then we started making our own plays, and I'm a teaching artist and teaching classes, but providing that as a part of our active theater community. So the company itself. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you both for being here. You know, Tamanya is wonderful at reminding us all, but PAAL's turning 5 this year. So it's like our first nonprofit birthday, like number 1 in our life cycle. But this conversation, I was told over and over 4.5 years ago that it wasn't possible. And look at where we are now. I'm like, I know not 1, but 2 expert organizations who have over a decade of experience doing it. They were all lying to me and I knew it. So thank you so much for being here. For the folks in the session with us, I would love for you to type into the chat concerns you have or questions that you have for on-site care, because I'm going to be asking my questions to start off with, but I would love for you to already start dumping your questions into the chat so that we can make sure that we are also addressing your specific needs. If we're streaming, feel free to comment or use the link to jump into the session with us. Yeah, we're already getting some good ones. Good. So I would love to start off with asking first for you each to give an example of an on-site project you've done with a theater this year. So we're not talking, you know, like past beauties. We're talking post-shutdown projects. And I personally know of both of yours and they're great. So throw the ball to Leanne and then throw the ball to Renee. And yeah, I would love for you to share about a project you've done this year in the restarting world.
Yes, restarting is the right word, because we're not back to any kind of normal right now. So it's important to keep in mind. We did do one. I was trying to remember. You said that, and I was like, wait, when was the last time we did? We did one in February, which was a difficult time because if you remember, that was a time where everyone was getting vaccinated again, but also there was a bit of a surge. So it was a little tricky. We are working on one right now with PAAL for this event, which we're excited to be on site tomorrow. But really what we were doing back with the theater company back in February was navigating, providing it on and in the space during a time where people were masking up and being extra cautious. Children were trying to parents were trying to navigate how vulnerable is my child. And so we ended up having 3 children on site, which was really, really exciting. And the children, and at that time, just to be extra cautious, because as you'll hear me say, but better be overcautious than undercautious. Everyone was wearing masks the entire time. And when the children were eating, they were in a separate space so that they could take off their mask and eat. So that's a little bit about it. I'm happy to expand even more, but tomorrow we're working with PAAL for this event to have childcare on site for the in-person part of this. And although some of the policies on masking have changed just because the world is changing as well, and you need to adapt with that, there's an equal amount of consideration of the safety and making sure everyone feels really, really comfortable. Oh, you're muted, Rachel.
I'm doing that all day. The event in February, I'd love for we can mention who our partners were because they were amazing too. And that was the childcare matinee, right? So this was for a theater, just so folks know, in the city, we do see lower numbers of childcare attendance in Manhattan than we do in some of the more rural case studies. And that has to do with travel. So one of the ways that we partner with Broadway babysitters is we also set aside a bit of a stipend that if anyone had a vulnerable child or needed on-site care, we worked with Broadway babysitters to have someone potentially available to go to that person's home, so that there was one to two patron families could have a sitter in their home in case they were traveling from New Jersey, not New Jersey, but like a faraway borough where Broadway Babysitters was. Awesome. So yeah, the masking shifts are huge. Can you share a little bit about what you require for your sitters to have in place in terms of the care, like masks, vaccine policies, and so that we can all hear, what that looks like for you as a care supervisor to ensure is happening for the children?
So all of our sitters, we recommend having all sitters at least have one booster. At this point, parents are specifically not, as I'm sure all of you know, we're all being extra cautious. So having the sitters at least have one booster is going to be essential to make sure everyone feels really safe. Obviously, we encourage people to have the second booster, the new booster. And if you can do that, that's an extra cushion of love to go around. But at this point, we require the first booster. As far as masking, during this time, we aren't unless we wouldn't have someone on site if they have even remotely been exposed. So because of that, the masking is not required. If someone feels most comfortable with a mask, we welcome everyone to make sure that they feel personally comfortable. But at this point in time, masking is not required by the children or the families unless they choose, and the sitters unless they choose to do so for their own personal safety.
And what about if you are doing childcare on site at a theater and they have a different policy?
So we, as you collaborate with organizations, we did work with an organization where in the specific space that we were in, they required masking. So because of that is the space that we were in when we were back in February. That is one of the reasons, but also of course safety, that we collaborated with them to make sure that we were following their policy. So it's much better to go beyond what is necessary, and especially if there is any amount of uncertainty. Masking is a great way to just add literally a barrier and literally a safety net to help everyone. If anyone is uncertain, that's the first thing I offer is our sitters are happy to wear masks, even if they are boosted, even if no one's exposed, all of those things. It's important to have people and parents and children walk into the space knowing that everything that could be done has been done.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really great. So for those listening, the care in New York City and Chicago will be compliant with whatever the theater space needs in order to stay, happy and healthy. That's great. Renee, throwing the ball to you. I'd love to hear about, I know that y'all did a project this year that we got to partner with you on, and shout out to National Women's Theater Festival. But yeah, we'd love to hear about a project that you did.
Did. And we did Women's Theater Festival, and it was indoors. I'm actually going to talk about another one just to give you some other ideas. We did one with the theater company that was outside, and which was really helpful because C does mostly site-specific pieces, so we have the stuff. And our care, a lot of our projects are matinees. Our portable nursery, we're ready to go outside anyway. So it was helpful. Their piece was outdoors at a facility, in an outdoor amphitheater. And so we were able to bring all of our show matinee to set up our Share the Show program, for kiddos outside. And, so we knew then, we were better suited as far as contact was concerned. But we still made sure we were hand washing. We knew where all the restrooms were. Everything was safe as far as that was concerned. We're very check-in and check-out security, as far as check-in and check-out, are really important to us, especially because they are in public spaces. When we are doing site-specific pieces, or if we're in somebody else's space where we're going to another space, as far as site-specific, when they were a site-specific company as well. So security is a big issue for us. But the COVID protocols, being outside was extremely helpful in that regard. And so we have the here in the South, we do have the freedom of weather, which is lovely. That being able to do things and prepare to do things outside as much as possible
That's great.
is nice.
Yeah, that sounds gorgeous. And yeah, Lynn.
I would also love to, because I think that's a really good point, that the space you're in has a big impact on the amount of safety and protocols you can add. And one thing that we have explored, and it depends on the abilities and the resources of the organizations, is having spaces that are separated for those that are most vulnerable. So if you do have really, really young children who maybe don't have all of the vaccinations that they could, maybe they're not eligible or anything, not eligible, but their pediatrician hasn't recommended it for whatever reason, it can be helpful to create a space that is separate from others and to add additional protocols for those specific, childcare providers, maybe adding an additional mask, things like that, that can help add some ease and safety to kind of mirror the idea of being outside, but just creating a different space with that in mind.
That's great. I love that offering. Fantastic. I would love to ask, because there was a question on insurance requirements. I'm going to jump right into some of these because they're going where I'm going to. In terms of what makes, your organizations uniquely hireable by theater companies, I'd love for you to share like what you would say to a producer or someone watching this saying like, how is this even possible? That I know that I don't want the liability of hiring a babysitter, but why would I hire a childcare company that is designed to do this? Like, what's the difference? And if you could include in it the insurance requirements, and just for full disclosure to folks listening, New York is going to be different than Illinois, is going to be different from North Carolina, but yeah, we uphold what you share. Thanks.
We have our liability insurance that we always provide as a part of our, when we send our proposal to a company that is interested in bringing us in our host organization proposal, when I send them with the lesson plan, with everything, I include our insurance policy. So they know straight, going in that they know that we have our liability insurance from the get-go. So for the company, in addition to like our director and employee liability insurance, but just the company liability insurance as well.
And that I know the answer to this, but can you talk a little bit about how that applies to the theater space if you're bringing your service into their space or onto their building?
It's going to affect whatever is happening in that particular space. Like what we are, we had one incident, I can't remember how many years ago it's been, where a child was hurt in the space. And so we were aware that, if anything had happened, that the parent could have called us to task when the child was hurt. If, we needed to cover that hospital bill, we could have been able to cover that hospital bill on that insurance, which was comforting for us and them.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously. So
how rare is that, would you say?
It was that one time.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing this?
12 years.
12 years.
And we did not have to cover anything. They did not ask us to cover anything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's great. So not only is it rare, but it's also covered no matter what. Yeah.
And I think it was comforting to everyone just to know that, yes, because that is what the companies will ask is, do you have your own insurance? Yes.
Yeah, of course.
But it's our program. So.
Great. Awesome. Leanne. Yeah.
I mean, I think Renee covered it all, but the biggest thing is working with organizations that have that liability in place, specifically that it moves wherever the service is provided, that it's not specific to a space, that it is specific to the services being provided, because that flexibility of wherever the people are, that is where the coverage is, helps to alleviate any stress. And a lot of times, for peace of mind, adding additionally insured, just putting that onto the policy will help to make sure that it really does extend to the space that that event or that matinee will be existing in. But it depends on what space and what organization you're working with. Some organizations just want to see the liability insurance, and spaces want to see it. Some people want to be added as additionally insured, and just making sure that you're communicating about that from the get-go as early as possible helps alleviate any stress down the line where, that everyone's stressed for 3 days before the event. You want to make sure that's covered right from the beginning so that you know that it's going to be as smooth as possible.
That's great. I know that, and for folks listening who are going to be ambassadors to this potential initiative or want to understand it better, I know that that's one of the, not only the biggest sticking points, but also the biggest revelations that we can offer producers and general managers and folks in charge of the space, because they're used to insurance that belongs to walls and belongs to buildings, and covers, what happens to the work in there. But it is completely different for these service organizations, for Seed Art Share and for Broadway babysitters, where the insurance is attached to the service. So where the service goes, the insurance is mobile and moves with them. And whenever, PAAL has shared that solution, or seen Broadway babysitters or Seed share that solution with organizations, they blink a couple of times and you just kind of see the wheels turning of like, oh, I've just got a different expectation of what my responsibility is here. It's actually much simpler. So that's great. Wonderful. I'm going to hold on to some of these questions for after. The next question I would love to throw to you is, what would you love to see folks take you up on more? Like what is the impact of this offering that you've seen in terms of, not just on parents and caregivers, but on the theater organizations themselves?
Take the help of the organization process. Like we are always happy to handle. In fact, we love handling the waivers or organizing the paperwork, allowing us to show up with, having asked the questions, having created the information we need, and having you just put a link into the email you send out and letting us handle it from there. I'm very type A, so I just love, being able to see all of that stuff. But it really does, we're not just at least at Broadway babysitters, we're excited to not only be providing the service of the childcare itself, but also to alleviate any of the organizational stress that comes from this additional, potentially unfamiliar part of doing a show or doing an event where there is childcare on site. So I would say, as much as you may also know the way that your organization likes to handle that stuff, I think it's welcoming that process that may already be in place with these organizations is going to help both feel confident in knowing they have the information they need to have a successful event.
That's great. Renee, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I want to work myself out of a job. I want this to not be needed, because down the road, I want every theater to figure out how to do this, because it's just culture, but that I can't expect to happen right now. So, but in the meantime, what I want is for them to listen, quite frankly, and to one of the things that you said to me, Rachel, that really was a game changer for me, then when we spoke a while back, was that it is the depth of your statement about it's the depth of the work and not, the quantity of you say the words that you say.
It's the depth of the impact and not the quantity of the children.
Thank you.
It is. Yeah, you said it for sure.
Well, I've quoted it close to right since then, a lot of times, just PS. But because we get frustrated when we offer this and we offer this and we offer this and nobody takes us up on it. And then I'm like, are there no children in all of Wake County? But I know there are. And so what I want is for people to take us up on it and not stay home and not go to work, So I want us to have better language, and I want them to listen and give me time to talk and explain it. But I want to be able to explain it clearly better than I'm explaining it right now. But yeah.
Yeah, if I can offer, do you want to jump in?
I just want to jump in just on that note of the one person. Hallie said it so well in the chat. It's useful if just one person uses the service. We provided on-site care for everything from auditions to childcare matinees. And we had one person take us up on the on-site audition childcare, and they booked the job. And they emailed us and said, I would not have been able to attend this audition if this wasn't provided, and you just helped me get this job. And that even though it was on site and it was available to all people, that one person, it really did have that impact. And we've had childcare matinees where they say, I haven't been to a show in 2 years, and this just made my year. Thank you so much. So I love and cherish the idea that if your goal is to have it be that everyone sees it's great, that's not why you want to be doing this. You want it to be that the people who attend can experience whatever it is the goal is that day, whether it's a show or auditions, and know that they were provided for and that they were thought of and considered.
Huge yes, huge yes. And that's really important as we're like pitching this, potentially to our organizations, or for organizations who are wanting to adopt this idea. This is not an investment, and we say at PAAL now, like, no more glory projects. This is not an investment in like the splash. This is an investment in like the 1 to 5 people who are going to become loyal patrons and then spread the word. And I believe that this can grow, but we have also, the Radical Parent Inclusion Project that like sold out the show and sold out the childcare matinee. So like it's happening. But and Tamani's mentioning what I was about to say is that right now there is no relationship between the theater and the parent patron, the caregiver patron. And to just bring a sitter and say, we have childcare now, the parents like, you have what? Excuse me? If we have not, and Tamania said, normalizing it is so important. Sometimes people need to see it 3 or 4 times before they feel comfortable engaging. Absolutely. I do marketing as my day job. It's 8 to 10 times before someone clicks buy. What are your 8 to 10 points of exposure that you support parents and caregivers in your organization? And then let's talk about how the numbers will impact the child care and caregiver support initiatives. In the same way that you can't do a single post for a show and expect people to come, right? It's the same expectation. I would love for both of you to talk about, and Leanne, we can talk a little bit about, Radical Parent Inclusion Project, which happened 2019. We can expand the scope of the timeline, but I would love for us to talk a little bit about infant care and the times that it's been provided. Let's talk about restructuring strategy. Let's talk about impact. Tell us the story of those initiatives.
I'm very passionate about this, so I will happily talk about this. There's so many things that if people with infants, as many people here know, there is an uncertainty anytime you go into a space that's not your home. So you need to make sure that the people who are attending with their infant feel safe in this space, and that the people caring for the infant feel safe in this space. Because if one of those parties doesn't feel safe, it can't be as successful as it could be. So we learned a lot of things. The Radical Parent Initiative was so successful because in large in part because half the kids that attended were infants. We had 10 infants of the 22 that registered that day, because those parents are not often considered and often left out of any initiatives because it is scary to have an infant on site. So they were so excited to have themselves be included and to get to finally see a show after who knows how many months or years, that it was a much larger impact because of that, because we were able to offer it on site. Now, a big thing we learned and have moved forward to excitedly to put into place is that no matter how big your space is, if there isn't clarity in who can be in what space or what part of the space, there is a certain amount of uncertainty that can lead to not danger, but just confusion. So we recommend having a different space if you can, either visually or, even if you just put up a wall, like a fake wall, or a full other room for that infant care. Because if you have a 6-year-old that's really excited because they're in a new space and they're excited and they're running around, no matter how safe we recommend a 1-to-1 ratio anytime there's an infant for sitters to infants because of the uncertainty of that space. No matter how wonderful that caregiver is, that sitter is with that child, if there's someone running around, it may disturb the child's sense of safety, with the audio, with anything else. So having a space that is either visually or you know, audibly, I don't even know how to say that.
Orally, sensorially. Yeah.
Sensorially separated in any way, shape, or form that you can will help. Usually we recommend 18 months and under be in that separated space, and then 18 months and up can be in that general space if that works for what makes the most sense for your organization and your event. I think I know there's more, but I will pause there to inhale and let Renee continue, because I'm sure you have so many things as well.
No, I think that's great. Our ratio this summer, this was our first summer doing infant care. And thank you, PAAL, for that. And it was glorious. We launched our little seedlings baby program, and it was so precious. And it was lovely, and it was wonderful. But yeah, so we were able to have littles, and that made a huge difference to be able to have a space that was just, we had 3s and down in one space, or that's not true, 2s and down. Is that right, Joanna? I think it was 2s and down in one room.
So for 3-year-olds, we left it to the
could
parents
go
to decide
to whichever
where
space
they
they wanted
their
to go
kids
to.
went.
Yeah. But mostly it was 2s and down. So they were able to nap. That was the important part, because they were there all day. So being able to have pack and plays and mats that they could take naps on during the day was really important. And they did. And so that was very important for them to be able to chill and sleep.
Yes, I love this. So really important tidbits that I always love to highlight is that for our most, technically quantity successful matinee, around 50% were under the age of 2. And that's really important for the kids on site concept, is that the folks who need communal responsibility and support the most are those with infants because of the sensitivity of the care that Leanne stated. And also, when is your Rolodex for sitters the thinnest? It's when you're a new parent. You don't have now that my children are 6 and 8, I've got a bigger Rolodex than when I first had my daughter and had to text my friend, who I don't know if he ever set an infant before, to hold my 5-week-old while I walked into my audition at a bar across the street, like not even hyperbole. So for us to say, you can bring your infant here, we have caregivers to support them while you engage with a theater festival, or while you go see a play, is going to be radical, like revolutionary care. The other thing that I want to highlight is that, when we say to a theater, introducing infants into the space, they hear all the things that like maybe they have to do. And Leanne, you and Renee were describing, okay, so we have the pack and play, we have the space, and then we separate it. That's really the recommendation, is like from PAAL, is partner with the experts, actually. And in every way that you can, partner with the experts, because we do want to expand that scope of care. We want to make it safe, and we want to bring in the folks who know how to do it. Awesome. I would love to continue taking questions from the chat. Let me see. Oh, yes. So I have some pretty specific opinions about one of them, but yes. Okay. So here's a fun little brainstorm. And I think we're going to stop the stream now, because we're going to get into the nitty-gritty with the folks in the room. If you want to join us, come on in, use the code FULL SUPPORT, all caps, no spaces, if you need us to sponsor your ticket.